series on relationships. So this is sort of part 2 of connection, relationships, and what it's really about in terms of being the church and being in community. By the way, I got a different table. How do you like that? Yep. You guys like the table, I could tell. By your silence, you're like, yeah, I really like the table. John chapter 13. And we're going to read starting verse 2, and then 4, and then 12. We're going to skip around a little bit to give you the context. It was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Verse 4, so he got up from the table, Jesus, took off his robe, wrapped a towel around his waist, and poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet. Down in verse 12. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, do you understand what I was doing for you? What a great question. So God, once again, we come to you. As has already been prayed, I ask that you would illuminate your word today. Truly that you would speak. In a chaotic world where we have so many voices and so many ideas and things going on, we want to pause for a moment and we want to sit at that table and listen to you. And I thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Any competitive people in the room? Any competitive people in the room? So like my theory is, don't play a sport or a board game for that matter unless there's at least a level of competitiveness. Now I realize that some of you do it for fun. To me, it's about winning. Okay, just to be clear. So a number of years ago, my two brother-in-laws, Heather's two brothers, got into woodworking. And one of them is like a savant, and he's like building out his like above his garage and some ridiculous, thing all by himself. And then the other one got into like making furniture. There's like websites, and you guys, you get nodding your head. You understand. There's websites where you can go to Home Depot, get the lumber, bring it home, and like voila, there's a table or something. And so he was showing us pictures. This was years ago. Maybe like 6 years ago, showing us all these pictures. Oh, I made a dining room table, and then I made a coffee table. And it's just spitting stuff out of his garage. Amazing stuff, And so I'm like, well, I can make something. Well, come on. How hard can it be? It's the website, the Home Depot. So I go to Home Depot, and I decide I'm going to build a coffee table. We need a coffee table. And so Heather's like, okay, well, I love that. I love your motivation. You should read the instructions and really look into it. I'm like, I got this. Listen, I worked in the lumber department at Home Depot when I was 25 years old. I was the department head, by the way. Yep. So I got it. So I go to the depot, and, I'm not even looking into what kinds of wood, which knowing now it matters. But at the time, I'm like, I'm just going to buy the cheap stuff that is sturdy. So I buy Douglas fir, which is the studs in your walls. It's just like standard wood. So I get the flattest pieces. I knew that much. I got the really flat pieces, got them in my truck, whatever. And I went down and I started building this thing. And I was meticulous because again, I'm looking at all these elaborate pictures from my brother-in-law. I'm like, dude, I gotta pony up here. So I am just really meticulous on this thing. And I get screws, the wrong ones because they were deck screws, but whatever. It added to the vibe. And I'm putting this thing together, and I'm lining it up, and I'm doing the spaces because I did slats on the top of it, spacing it out, and everything. So I finally build it. And first of all, it's extremely heavy. So it literally takes two people, lifting it, and Heather's like, why is it? Listen, babe, it's supposed to be this way, it's sturdy, right? This quality, this is what people pay for, right? I'm just making it up as I go. So anyways, well, lo and behold, I didn't consider, you're right, you want to consider the lumber that you use. And so because I didn't consider the lumber I used, I didn't think about maybe the wood should be dried out before you build it. Because not only is it really heavy, but something happens when wood dries. So it's just immaculate, right? And it's not the coolest thing ever, but it's at least straight lines and it's flat, and I'm super proud of it. So then a couple of days start going by, and I notice that the slats on the top are starting to like move and shift and twist. And like every day I'm coming out and looking at it, and I'm like, no, stop. Like it was perfect before. And there's like the spaces were perfect. Like a week goes by and the wood's dry now. And now it's all twisted and mangled and wobbly. And what was like this perfect little coffee table was this like pretty messed up, tangled piece of I don't know what. So I painted it, and we used it for a while because Heather was gracious, and she's like, way to go, babe. Let's just say I didn't send the picture to my coffee table to my brother-in-laws. That didn't happen. But I was thinking about that story and how in life, in our relationships, I think we start out in most relationships, in marriage, with your kids, friendships, where we spend a lot of intentionality to get the board straight, to make it look good and streamlined and like not wobbly and good. And then we walk away and we come back and it's like, man, it's kind of wobbly. And like the boards are all twisted. You couldn't even set a cup of coffee in some places on top of the coffee table because like the boards were so twisted, like the coffee would spill. And I feel like sometimes in life with our relationships that we intended it to be perfect, and what ended up being is this like unique sort of twisted deal, and a lot of times we don't know what to do with it. And I feel like Jesus sitting at this table when he's washing the disciples' feet, he's giving a couple of keys that I think are so important for us to dig into. What does it look like to have healthy relationships? Now listen, this isn't going to be an exhaustive teaching on relationships, but I think there's a few keys that are so incredibly important. So here we get to eavesdrop on Jesus' conversation with his disciples as he prepares them for, don't miss this, kingdom work. Listen, he could have said anything. He could have talked about anything. This is his last moment, as Fernando, who did such a good job today, articulated. This is the Last Supper that Jesus is sitting around the table with his disciples. Why is it called the Last Supper? Because it was the Last Supper with him. And this was his last parting words. Now, they didn't know. They didn't understand he was actually going to go die like he's said multiple times, but he knew. So what do I want to impart? And what did he impart? He talked to them about his finished work of the cross, and then he talked to them about relationships. Why? Because he knew that the hope of the church, the thing that he birthed when he came and died, the thing that he birthed as a movement to change the world was hinged upon these relationships. That it wasn't just this. It was this. And so he's like, let's just set the table here because I want to talk to you about something that's going to make or break this whole deal. And then he says at the end of that talk, and after he washes their feet, same chapter, verse 34, a new commandment I give to you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. And here it is. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. It'll be the biggest banner and poster board ever of the church as they get to look on and watch how you do it. Amazing. So Jesus wasn't just teaching them how to serve. A lot of times we use this passage, oh, he washed their feet. Awesome. So we should, please don't touch my feet, but you know what I mean. You get the point. We should serve one another, and we should. But there's so much more that's happening here. I believe he was teaching them about relationships in the context of the table. The table. I put this, prioritizing and protecting this table is the key to every relationship in your life. So what is the table? And we did a whole series on this, but I want to articulate it and illustrate it just a little bit, and that's why I have this amazing table up here. Is the table is we see in, there it is. we see in Psalm chapter 23, this really cool verse. It says, "You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies." Who's you? The Good Shepherd. And he has prepared a table for us. And it's a table that we get to sit at every day if we choose. He's prepared it for you. Now, what's at the table? Well, it's a lot of what we've talked about in terms of communion, celebrating his finished work, but it's so much more than that because he said he's the good shepherd. He goes before us. He leads us. He speaks. We hear his voice. And then it says so much more in Psalm chapter 23. So there's this thing happening at the table. And I believe that Jesus, when he sat at the Lord's Supper around this amazing table, was sort of putting some stuff together for the disciples. And then he washed their feet and he talked about loving one another. But there was something else that was really interesting that happened at this table. Notice in John chapter 13, the majority of the chapter, actually the conversation shifts to be about Judas, which I think is very interesting. This is the last moment Jesus gets to spend with his disciples, and he's talking to them about this incredible koinonia love and fellowship that they get to have. And who does he invite to sit around the table? Judas. He's there the whole time. In fact, it even says that the enemy was enticing him, Judas, while he was sitting at the table with Jesus and his disciples, the Last Supper. And in the middle of that, this was happening. He was teaching them, and he's teaching you and me about hurt, offense, forgiveness, and who the real enemy is at the table. See, Jesus reminds them that the enemy is prowling. He doesn't just come right out and say, "This is my agenda." We know he's extremely sneaky. So he grabs a chair. And if we're not careful, he'll sit down because he's prowling around figuring out, how can I bring disconnect where there's connection? And I wrote this. This is the enemy's primary goal. The enemy's goal is division, and his strategy, offense. Anybody ever been offended? People are like, I'm not going to raise my hand for that. This is his primary strategy, to divide. And so Jesus is reminding his disciples, as this is playing out right in front of them at the table, Satan is there, and he's prowling. So if we're not careful, he'll sit down at the table. A table that's created for you and me, he'll just sit right down, and he'll start talking to you. He'll say things like, "How's it going? Your job's kind of a train wreck, isn't it? What about that coworker? Yeah, he hates you. See, because you remember when you went to work and he totally ignored you, and then they went out to lunch and they didn't invite you? Watch, tomorrow when you walk in, he won't look at you." I mean, these are the kind of things that the enemy is whispering to you. Now, listen, we understand that the enemy's not omnipresent. He's not everywhere, so he's not always at your table. But the spirit of the world is right here. It's the spirit of the world. And we talked about this in the End Time series, that this world, unfortunately, has a lowercase g God, right? Now, that won't always be the case, but right now, the God of this world has a spirit of this world, and the spirit is division. Now listen, we know that beyond a shadow of a doubt because we live in a world where it's so easy to get offended. I mean, oh my gosh, you can't post anything online anymore if it's not like about your cat or about your immediate family. Otherwise, you'll get canceled and blown up because people are just so offensible. That's the world we live in. And it will get worse. Why? Because the spirit of this world, that's his strategy, is offense. And so when I say you sit at the table and the enemy will pull up a seat, that doesn't mean that the actual enemy with the pitchfork and the horns showed up today on your doorstep, although that could happen. Or one of his dominion demons will show up. But really, that doesn't even need to happen because the spirit of this world has a message. And that message is in your head, showing up at your table, constantly reminding you and teaching you how to think. And he's not just teaching you how to think about the word or about God or about society. He is primarily teaching you how to think about your relationships. Why? Because his agenda, his goal is division, and his strategy is offense. So now, you have to understand that the enemy comes with goodies. When he comes, he loves to give you gifts. Now, the Bible says that every good and perfect gift comes from the Father above. So the gifts that the enemy or the spirit of the world gives me are not good, but they can appear good because he gives you a magnifying glass. This is his primary gift to you. And what he says to you and me at the table as we're sitting is he says, this is going to help you in your relationships. This is going to protect you. This is going to give you a lot of clarity. This is going to show you who people really are. And so use it when you're thinking about your boss. And you just start looking through this thing and you start examining, yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought about the way he's been sort of talking about me and doing, and then the enemy's like, yeah, it's worse than you think. Examine it. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's really bad. And then he starts talking to you about your pastor. Remember that in the hallway? He just blew right past you. He didn't even remember your name. I don't think he even likes you. You're right. Golly, that guy needs to get a grip. And he prowls. And he comes to divide. And he comes specifically, and so he'll just cruise right around. He'll just sit right here, right in between the two of you. There just happened to be a seat right here. Don't give the enemy a seat at your table. That's right. And so he'll say things to you, right? He'll say things like, this guy's killing me. He's killing you, huh? He doesn't take very good care of you. I don't know. I think you could do better. Bro, you got to watch out for this one. I mean, can you trust her? I don't trust her. And then he says, you know what? I got a gift for you. Use that. That's going to help you because now you can investigate and now you can see what's really going on. And listen, you shouldn't put up with all this stuff. You know, it's like it's too much grace, bro. Use this. When you look at her, use that because that's going to put things in perspective about what's really going on here. It's a gift. And just like that, we've given the enemy a seat, a killer, really, a seat at our table. And you know what I found? You know what I found about, and go ahead and put up that slide. You know what I found about magnifying glasses? Because I never used one before, and I'm starting to use reading glasses, and it's a disaster. But I'd never used this until I bought it for this illustration. And you know what I found? There's two ideas that are really important about this. What promises to be a tool in your life ends up being a weapon against the people you love and against you. And so the two things that I found about the magnifying glass, the first thing is that it's impossible to see the whole picture. It's impossible. Michael, I want you to point this at your lovely wife that you're never going to use this on. And I want you to try to get a good look at her face. And then And then Heather, no, you got to get way closer. That's the whole point. You got to get way closer. And then Heather, I want you to hold up in your hand a number, whatever number you want. And then Michael, I want you to tell me what number she's holding up.
No, cheater. You can't see.
Now I want you to give him a thumbs up or a thumbs down, which is going to represent your tone and attitude towards this man as he's inspecting you. He doesn't even know. Isn't that amazing? It is impossible to see the whole picture. And so why do we take things so out of context? We blow things up. We get the wrong idea. We make assumptions about people, and we arrive at these conclusions that everybody's against us. That person's against us. My spouse definitely doesn't have my best interest in mind. And we've arrived there because we've picked up what we thought was a tool, and instead it's a weapon that's defeating me and it's defeating my spouse. And I can't even see what's really going on because I am so hyper-focused. In order to use this, you have to get so hyper-focused that you miss everything else going on. The other thing that I recognize when I use this is it's impossible to move forward. Because you have to get so close to get anything done, I mean, literally, like, I have no idea where the step is happening. Like, I can't, if this is what I'm looking through, then I'm trying to get ahead in my life. I'm trying to get past my past. I'm trying to get over, like, that person and the way they're in my marriage. I'm trying to get over some stuff that's happened in the past, and I'm looking through this thing. It is impossible to move forward. So here's the good news. We're going to put that one away. Here's the good news. Your good shepherd, who's prepared this table for you, has a gift. And if you'll put the magnifying glass down, if you put this down, then his gift to you is this. This is a makeup mirror. Guys, buckle up. I promise that I didn't have this already just available to grab my makeup mirror. But I love this picture. We put this down at the table, and we take this. This is the start. This is the start of any relationship in your life that you care about. You put this down, and you pick this up. I love the passage. He prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies. It's not for anybody else. It's definitely not for the enemy or the spirit of this world. It's for me and him. And what I love about this, it's sometimes a little awkward looking at yourself, but what I love about this is it really focuses in on what's the whole deal to start out at this table. Because then he goes on to say, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul. This is such a powerful table verse because notice the scriptures. It's he, not they. When you take a moment and go, all right, I need to look here first. Before I get all worked up, before I start blaming, pointing fingers, I need to start with, okay, what's going on here and what is he doing in my life? Well, I'll tell you what he's doing. He's making me lie down. I love that verse. He makes me. And you're like, quit telling me what to do. Gosh. He makes me. When you're holding this, here's a power. This is the book we're going through. Here's a powerless mentality. When you're holding this, everybody else makes you. They ruined my day. If they would only, then we would have, our finances would be better, or my marriage would be, my friendship, this job opportunity, they did something to me. That's this talking. What is this? You know what this says? He makes me. This is a game changer. It's not always easy to look in the mirror, but what I love about when you look in the mirror, this isn't a selfie stick. This is not a selfie stick. This is a table mirror. This is a conversation at the table with your Father. And when you look in the mirror, he says, I make you lie down in green pastures. I lead you. No one else is leading you. No one else has power over you. I hold you in the palm of my hand, and when you sit at the table and when you look at here, what you're looking at is what the Father sees, your good shepherd. What he sees is this incredible man or woman of God that he's leading and he's guiding and he's filling. He's doing it, they're not doing it. So we start with me. And what we see at the picture of Jesus at this table as he's talking to his disciples in the midst of the betrayal that's taking place right before their eyes, and he's saying, love one another, he goes around and he washes their feet. What was he saying? He was saying, let me wash you off first. And then we can start working on them in your relationship. It has to be you first. And remember, Peter was like, no, Jesus, don't. If you're going to wash my feet, wash all of me, because I don't want you doing that. And he goes, listen, Peter, I need to do this. I need to model something for you, because what happens at the table is this. I'm washing you. Another word, I'm healing you. Can I tell you that so much of the relational dynamics and issues that we have today have nothing to do with today? It's typically not even the person that you're interacting with and frustrated with. It's something else that happened a while ago and most likely was somebody else. And it's left you wounded and disappointed and dysfunctional. It's left you powerless. And so you're just projecting onto this person that's making you feel like that person made you feel back there. And so we pick this up and say, how dare you? I can stand behind it. I see you. I see what you're trying to do to me, and I'm not going to let you do that because it happened to me before. And the Good Shepherd says, why don't you sit down at the table? Why don't you take a seat? Take a deep breath. Put the magnifying glass down, because it's a weapon you're using against someone, and it's hurting you. And get out the mirror. And have the courage to say, okay, Lord, what's going on in me? And he looks at you with love in his eyes that you cannot fathom. And if you'll let him, he'll begin to heal you. Right here at this table. And there's no one else that needs to be here. There's no intervention. This isn't a counseling session with you and so. This is not a confrontation situation. This is you and your shepherd as he tells you how much he loves you and how much he didn't want that thing to happen to you the way that it did. But he's speaking a new word over your life. But he doesn't leave us there. We've put this down, and at this point in the game, we're like, okay, Lord, I receive that, I hear that, but there's some dynamics going on in my life still. And I get it. It's you and not them. It's he leads me, they don't lead me. He makes me, they don't make me. Okay, but at some point, I got to get up from the table, and I got to deal with this. And so now is this the time that I get this out? Because my coworker's killing me. And he goes, no, I got something better. I got glasses. And these are prescription glasses, I call them table glasses, because they give you a perspective from heaven about the world. I love this passage, Ephesians chapter 1. It's familiar, but I want you to see it in this context. I pray that the eyes of your heart might be enlightened or opened or awakened, in order that you may know what is the hope to which he's called you, right in the middle. The riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints, and what is the exceedingly greatness of his power towards us who believe. See, I believe that the enemy has been working overtime to steal your vision, your perspective. And it's the spirit of the world. And you're seeing things as they are in the world. I don't think that some cases you're probably not even reading into it. People are people. They're frustrating and hurtful. And it's easy to move forward and even think you're being godly by just seeing it for how it is and dealing with it as it is. And I'm telling you, when you take a moment and you sit at the table and you look eye and eye with your shepherd, and he's like, man, I prepared this for you, and I begin to work in healing in your life, and then he gives you a perspective that only comes from the table about your life and about the people in your world, and it's completely different. What I love about this verse is the power and purpose that comes with vision. When you have vision, when you know where you're going, you immediately feel a sense of like all the powerlessness and victimization goes away, and immediately you shift into a place of like, no, I actually know where I'm going and what this is about. And so I'm able to interact with people in my life a little bit more objectively. Take a step back, put the magnifying glass down and go, you know what? They're probably just really hurt. How can I minister to that? Rather than getting offended because they didn't check all the boxes that make me feel good, how can I take that perspective off and put a new one on? Oh. So everyone doesn't have to encourage me and love on me and tell me all the things I need to hear to be okay. No, actually they don't. Because I just sat at my table and I just heard my shepherd tell me who I am. That no one is leading and guiding me. He's leading and guiding me. He's healing me. He's restoring me. And so I get up from the table, I put on a new perspective, and I go, you know what? It's pretty difficult for me to be offended because I am a messenger of his goodness and love to the people around me. Period. That's what I'm doing here. Now, that doesn't mean that we just let whoever into our lives. Like, we need to have boundaries for sure. But within those boundaries, we're able to reach through the curtain and go, you know what? I'm here to bring love. And even if you spit on my face, I'm here to bring love. I'm okay. Because my shepherd assures me of that. You don't. I've taken the power away from you to make me okay. Because here's the thing, you couldn't make me okay anyway. Listen, if I'm depending on you, I'm dipped. And if you're depending on me, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you down. But you know who won't? The shepherd at the table. He makes you. And he leads you. And so when you get up from the table and you choose to put on the glasses that he gives you, it's a game changer. And you know what one of my favorite things about these versus this? My hands are free. My hands are free. And that doesn't mean I'm just free to minister, although I am. But I'm free from, one of the things that we do most with this? We look backwards. And we constantly nurse and rehearse those things and what they did. And some of it's years and years ago, and some of it's a couple weeks ago, but we're constantly dissecting it And then it becomes the perspective of today. Because we're so focused on this that when we interact with somebody, it's boom, we're immediately back there and we see that person again, and we can't see the whole picture because we don't have heavenly glasses and we're all wounded. And so it's reinforcing, see, you're still that way, and they've probably totally changed. But we can't get past it. But when we put this down, we are free. Oh, you guys, I have not arrived. This is a journey for me just like it is for you. But I'll tell you, I've tasted a little bit of freedom in this area. And I know some of you have too. And there is nothing like walking free of offense, free of bitterness, free of frustration and hurt. And how come you didn't? And how come you did? And why can't? You're just free. Oh, man. It just feels so good. And then your hands are free to love and play golf. Your hands are free to love people right where they are, in the middle of their dysfunction. Do you know that, man, this blew me away. Do you know that Jesus watched Judas's feet? What? Jesus, you invited him here, then you wax eloquently about the fact that he's your guy, he's the dude that does all of this, tells everybody, and then he washes his feet. Wow. You know, Jesus wasn't offended a day in his life, and he wasn't powerless a day in his life. Why? Because he'd go up on the mountain, and he'd say, okay, Father, I need to sit at the table for a minute. I need to get out the mirror and what are you doing in me? I don't want to be offended. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to be frustrated. And it's not on them because they can't fix me. But you can. Show me how you're leading me today. Show me how you're guiding me today. Because he works all things for the good. You know who can't see that and understand that verse? People staring into this. Because they can't see all the things. But when you put this down, you put these on, and then you look back, and then you say, oh, there was all things working together so that I can move forward in freedom. Yeah. I'm going to invite Adam to come. And as we close this morning, I believe that there's a clear message to us today, and that is he has freedom for us. And sometimes it's a process. Sometimes it can happen like that. But I can tell you this, the common denominator, the table. Prioritizing this table is the key to every relationship in your life. It can happen in the car. It can happen in the shower. It can happen in your cubicle. It can happen sitting on your back porch. The important thing is that you make space for your good shepherd to speak into your life. At the table, he's prepared for you. And he's got everything you need for today. Would you allow him to begin to speak to you? Put this down. Some of you need to go have some conversations with your spouse, with your child, with a colleague. This would be so powerful. Hey, can we talk for a second? I need to repent to you. I need to apologize. And I need to be honest with you. I've been using this. And I've been looking at all the things you're not. All the things, all the ways that you're screwing up. And listen, I'm the first to admit, I struggle so much with this. It's so easy to do. I'm looking at all the things that you're not, and I've missed who you are. You're beautiful. You're a gift. Would you forgive me? I'm going to put this down. And I'm going to see you differently. And here's the best part. You don't have to do anything for me to do that. This is my choice to prioritize you as the gift of God that you are. And after you pick them off the floor, because they're going to fall over, they'll give you a big hug. Will you bow your heads and close your eyes? God, I thank you for today. The gift that you're offering, healing and wholeness, a new way of living that you modeled at the table for us. As you were explaining that day with the disciples, and God, you're sharing with us this morning. There's a way to walk in freedom. And so, Jesus, I pray that you would begin to lead and guide us into this new way. God, that we would have eyes to see and ears to hear. And we give you praise for that in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you. As always, we're not in a hurry today. We'd love to pray with you. If you've got something going on in your life, for the rest of us, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you next week.